good morning, and welcome to Let's Talk Destiny Talk Show. I'm really excited today to have you join me as we share this episode of our show. And I'd like for you to just take a moment right now to like the video, to subscribe to our YouTube channel so you can stay in touch with what we're doing. And we have some great content on our channel that I know will bless your life. So as you subscribe today, you will stay in touch with us and you'll know what great things we have coming down the line. Today, I'd like to just welcome my very special guest, someone who I can always depend on and has my back no matter what. And that is my baby sister, Kelly Greene Adams. And today, as most of you know, this month, we have been talking about honoring our treasures, honoring our elders and our ancestors. And the older I get, the more important I realize that this is. And so today, Kelly and I are going to be talking about some of our elders and our ancestors and just sharing some special memories, some that make us laugh, some that make us cry. But we just want to share and get on record some of the great things that we remember about them. So today I welcome back to my platform my sister, Kelly Greene Adams. Good morning.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Fantastic. Life can't get any better.
Awesome. Awesome. So, Kelly, I want to start off by talking about a woman that we don't talk about much. Even when we're talking about our family and our elders and our ancestors, we don't really talk about her much, but she's really been in my mind and on my heart a lot lately. And that is our fraternal or paternal, one or the other, paternal grandmother, Mrs. Beulah Davis. And I just want you to share some memories about her.
Wow. And you're right. I think because our mother's side of the family is so large and we had a lot of interaction with that side, that sometimes we neglect to share that portion of our history that came from our dad. But our grandmother, Beulah Davis, our father's mother, I have great memories of her, fantastic memories. And I think one of the things that you and I have shared is one of the things I remember is her explaining to us how she got to be Budda, because most grandparents are called mom or grandmom or whatever, but we called her Budda. And I do remember her telling us the story. I was always intrigued by it because even the fact that our uncle, who was our Uncle Earl, that we called Uncle Buster, he was the one who could not say Beulah. So he said Budda, and that became her name. And that became, everybody called her Budda. Mom, dad, my Aunt Jerry. And then as the grandchildren, we started calling her Budda. But my memories of her as a person was, as I learned about her, a little more about her history, as our father shared it, it was, she was a strong Black woman who raised 3 children, apparently without the help or support of their father, and had a strong faith. I remember her favorite song, hymn, was Have a Little Talk with Jesus.
I was going to ask you about that.
Yes, and I remember that because whenever I think of her, I think of that song, Have a Little Talk with Jesus. And the first place in my life that I remember the serenity prayer was with her. She had it on her wall, and she lived in Massachusetts, and we would go there and stay. And I remember this plaque being on her wall. I remember her wearing the old dusters that you zip up the front with the flowers. I mean, that's my memory of her. And even as you know, when she got later in life and was sick and came to live with us for a while, I still saw that strong Black woman like that raised us, and we would go out to play, and she would always bring us in, put us in the bathtub, and put a long t-shirt on you. That was the way you slept. And she just was so consistent, is a word I think of, because over the years, no matter what, she was always consistently a strong person to me, a person who taught me, I think, a lot about just doing what you have to do and keeping it moving, and making no excuses. So I'm honored, because that is a part of our legacy that we don't get to share a lot. And a lot of people say that I look like my mom, but have a lot of the characteristics of my father. And I always think that I would give credit to her for that strong will, that determination.
And
I'm laughing.
something else Daddy said about you was that you remind him of his brother Buster with your entrepreneur spirit. Like he said, if anybody can come up with some ideas, it's that Kelly. And she's so much like her, like Buster. And I would laugh about that. And I would think about Uncle Buster. And like every year when we would go to Atlantic City to see him, he would have these shops on the boardwalk, and it would be something different every year.
But he never gave up, and I got that perseverance from that side of the family. Yeah. I was laughing just thinking about, and you read a lot of things where people are talking about, seeing some failures as successes, and that you're just tweaking your successes until it becomes that. And I just never, Jamie, never had a give up kind of spirit. If something doesn't work, then I just go to the next thing. And when I think about Uncle Buster, you're exactly right. He was such an entrepreneur, and a lot of his stuff didn't pan out, and some did. So go Uncle Buster. But I mean, I think you have to credit that. I believe those strengths being, in the field that I'm in, I see how the foundation of a person's life really has a major effect on who they are later. And I know we can change, and I know we can change that, but it has to be a conscious effort. And so for the positive side, when you are reinforced constantly or taught to believe that nothing's impossible, through whether it's like really being verbally taught that, or whether it's through watching somebody persevere, that is something that's ingrained in you, whether you realize it or not, that failure is not an option, just keep trying. And so even without saying those words, I feel like that was their testimony from my father's side of the family, and then from Budda and for Uncle Buster.
I wanted to talk about that side of the family today. We can talk about the other side in a few minutes, but whenever somebody, because people that know us, they'll say, oh, that's Apostle Greene's daughter, that's Pastor Greene's daughter. And so they always talk about the Palmer side of the family and how we come from families of faith, and just about everybody in the family was a preacher and blah, blah, blah. But we very seldom, if hardly ever, talk about the strength and what we get from the other side. And the more that I'm talking to you right now, I'm remembering, like I said, the entrepreneur thing that comes from Uncle Buster, and the fact that Daddy was not raised in the church like Mom was. And so he didn't have that foundation, because he was like in his 30s when he, joined the church or whatever. But he was a strong person. At 16, he joined the military, lied about his age. So he could get it. So he could get in the military. He shared stories with us about his father not being in his life, but his father was always at a bar or a club, or I think back then they called them juke joints. And as a little boy, Daddy said he would go and sit outside just so he could watch his father go in and out, so he could, see him that way. Uh, but even though he didn't have a relationship with his father, he was the epitome of a great father. He made sure when
Well,
you
I
had,
think, right, I'm sorry. I
that's
think,
okay.
Jamie, that is so important because and again, this is what I tell people all the time, that the negative can be turned to a positive, and or the whatever. So it's like, if your parent was an alcoholic, you can choose never to drink. You don't have to say, well, because my dad was an alcoholic, then I'm going to be an alcoholic. It's just a matter of being able to say, what did I learn from these people? Like, what did I bring back? And I think that is why he was so adamant that about his family being together, and about that, because he didn't have that, and
Yeah.
because he knew the effect. And I remember with my son Christian, when his father and I were divorcing, and it was not a really amicable as it could have probably been. But I remember my dad just saying to me one day, he said, I know you two are not getting along. Excuse me. He said, but please do not stop that man from seeing his son, because one thing I know for sure is he loves that boy.
That's right.
And of course, then he told me the story again. So we had to hear the story about how he sat outside the place, and he said, and my dad would come out sometime, and all I would get was a rub on the head, just acknowledging that I'm there, because he was named for his father. His father's name was James. And I think that meant something, and he did not want my son to experience the lack of his father. And I'm grateful for that, because I listened to that. And those who know, his father, I tell Christian a lot of times, even when he's not happy with his dad, I said, your dad may not be the best person, like in this particular situation, but this I know, what he does out of an error of loving you. I mean, he does. I never had, that to worry about. He was always trying, at whatever stage of life he was in, to be a father to his son. And I don't know how that would have turned out if it had been my way, because I would have just went on about my business. But my dad, because of what impact not having his father meant to him, he did not want that for his grandchildren. And I think about that even when he talked to me one day about one of his, Aunt Catherine was like, one of his best friends. And I remember him saying to me one day, he said, I wish our children my children were as close as her children. And I said, well, what do you mean by that? He's like, because they're always doing things together and whatever. And, I let him have that moment, because that's what it looked like to him. That was his idea of what family is for, and I guess everybody's different in their perception, because, for me, it's about, might not be about talking every day, but it's about being there when you need somebody.
Right.
At the end of the day, knowing that if I don't have nobody else in this world, I got my people. And, that's enough. That'll get me through. But I think about that, and I think about Aunt Jerry, which is another source of strong Black woman, that because she had a situation in her life before people even talked about it a lot, of a husband that was sweet, Uncle Oscar. Always 90% of his life he spent inebriated.
That is so true. Oh my God.
Like, every time I saw him, I don't know how many times I saw him sober. Yeah, I mean, it was just that little bit, but I can say almost every time I saw him, he was drunk. But she managed still to, hold things together and to stay with this man and be with him until he died. And even then went on to do other things. And I think about sometimes just, Daddy used to say that I reminded him of his sister because I wouldn't listen, and because I was strong-willed, and I'm thinking again, that's a family character trait. It wasn't just her. You're strong. He was
That's
strong-willed,
right.
and
That's right. That's right.
so how are you gonna like say, and I had to come to realize that I am James Greene's daughter in those character traits.
And I remember two things I remember about Aunt Jerry's house, which was in Lowell, Massachusetts, by the way.
Where I was born. Whoop, whoop.
Yeah, everything wasn't done.
Thank
Everything wasn't done in Delaware, people.
you.
But I remember Uncle Oscar being drunk, and I remember she had Avon, boxes of Avon all over the place because she
Always.
stole Avon. Yeah.
Forever. And you know what else I remember? I remember Skippy. Remember Skippy?
The dog.
But I remember when Skippy got cataracts, and we
yes.
see them, and he charged out the front door, and I thought he was going to attack us, but because dogs are smarter than humans, when he got closer to us, he recognized our scent and he just stopped. But I remember her house. I remember, she lived on 11 Ray Street.
Oh my God, I didn't remember that. You are like definitely the keeper of the memories in this family. I remember she had a car. It was a Zephyr, Zephyr or some kind of car. I do remember that. Yeah.
I don't remember that. So you got one up on me there, sister.
But I was thinking about Budda and how when we would go stay with her, and she was definitely a keeper of when the lights come on, you got to come in the house.
Oh yeah.
Which was so annoying.
And I remember, but I do remember being there in the summer. And do you remember going to the summer camp and riding the horse? I did. I don't know if did you go? I went. I don't know where you were. But yeah, so I do remember playing with the kids in the neighborhood. And I remember her living in like what we now call the projects, and meeting of a girl named Anna. Remember Anna? And they just how to cuss in Spanish.
Yes, I remember that. That was very important to me that summer.
Yes.
To learn how to say that curse word.
Now, when I hear certain words as a curse word in Spanish, I say to the person, I know what you said. But I think that part of our life, like, that side of the family, and I think in that regard, we are more Greenes than Palmers, because we don't need all of that. Like Mom and them were like always together, always doing things, always, whatever one had, like, whatever. And I saw my dad and his siblings, they all lived different places, and they interacted in terms of, holidays and special events, but they basically existed knowing that I have the love of my family, but I don't have to be around them all the time. And I think that's where we got that from, because I'm that person and you're that person. Like, I love family and I love them, but it's just like I remember when Mom passed away, and one of my aunts said to me, well, you're going to have to come up and see us a little more often. And I said, why? I didn't understand. I could call you. I don't mind calling you, but why do I have to come up? I ain't been coming up there. So it's not like something I've been doing that I will continue to do. And it doesn't mean I love you any less. It's just the way we were raised. We weren't raised that we always were at grandmom's house. And, you know, when we went up there, like, you know, it wasn't that often, even when we lived in that area. So it wasn't, my father had a sense of family, but he also had a sense of more the nucleus family
Yeah.
than extended family. And so from that, you know, it's like, that's, you know, what I think we got that from that side of the family. Like there wasn't a whole lot of stuff going on family wise, like family vacations and all that crap. But there was a sense of family.
And that to me was like, that is such a blaring difference in mom and dad, with regard to mom had like 100,000 family members, and there was always groups of people doing stuff. And daddy only had one brother and one sister, and they may see each other every so many years, but they would call each other periodically, check in, let everybody know what's going on. And so their personalities were like that. Daddy could just go to church, do what he got to do from the pulpit. But when he went home, he was done. He didn't want to be around a whole lot of people. Mom, on the other hand, will go to church and then still invite a whole bunch of people over to the house, because she was used to being around a lot of people like that. I think our sister Sylvia was like that. She just, every time I went to her house, it was people there. And I, on the other hand, like I could sit in here for days by myself and I'm fine. Like, especially now that I got Zoom and whatever, and I can see your face. Like, I don't have to see you in person. What are you coming over here for? But so I have to balance that out. And I also was thinking, I don't know if you remember, because you're again the keeper of the memory. What do you remember about our cousin David?
I remember, and this is going to be funny what I'm going to say. I remember him being a homosexual when it wasn't popular. And I thought he was very handsome. Oh my goodness, he was so good
He
looking.
was fine. Mhm.
But we just weren't his flavor. He was definitely batting for the other team. But I remember him again being not like his brother Howard and his dad, in that personable kind of like outgoing, always cutting up, laughing, having a good time. He was more serene and settled, and I think more like daddy in that regard, like
Or
kind of,
reserved.
yeah, yeah. Because he didn't do a lot of the family stuff even. But I think in hindsight, a lot of that had to do with the lack of acceptance of who he was. But I do remember him being extremely attractive, and I do remember him being like reserved is a good word. You know, versus Uncle Buster, you know, being loud and boisterous. And it's funny because when you're talking about balance, when we talk about extroverts and introverts, people always think of clearly people who like are up in front of people all the time must be extroverts and whatever, but that's not true. Like you said, sometimes it's what you have to do. It's a part of your job, it's part of your makeup. But then the question is, from where do you draw your strength? And if you draw your strength from being around people, or if you draw your strength from being alone. And it's funny, when I was thinking about what you said, because I have two living sons, and they are the opposite. Like, one is that he draws his strength from being around people. He just love to be around people. He don't,
That's true.
you know, he is so like his aunt Sylvia. It's like, you know, they never meet a stranger. And you know, they meet people, and in the 2 days they fast friends, and they hanging out, and they click, they connect, they do their thing. Me, while my other son, we used to live in the same house, and he could be in one room and I'd be in another room all day, except for when it's time to eat or to have a conversation that we need to have, and we would do it over the phone. I'd call him like he was living somewhere else. Did you want to grab something to eat? Well, I'm gonna order. I'll call you when it's ready. I'd call him on the phone, be like, the people downstairs with the food, go take them the tip. You know, so it's like, And his father also was that way. That's the way our marriage probably worked for 10 years, because we didn't demand a lot of attention, and that was a good thing for both of us. I think that has to do with, again, what's going on in here too, because being content with who you are, liking to spend time with yourself. And I think my dad was that person. He was a person ever learning, like, and that's why I want you to stop teasing me about going to school, because I feel like if daddy was living in this dispensation, he would be doing the same thing, because he always had, hundreds of books and all of that, always reading, always studying. And that's where I got that from. So
Yeah.
now that I think of it, I want y'all to stop picking on me about that, because I inherited that quest for knowledge. Thank you, Daddy.
That's funny. Yes, he did have, always had hundreds and hundreds
Oh
of
my
books
God, yes. And
that
always take
magically
notes.
disappeared, but we won't talk about that.
No, we're not talking about that. But I mean, he was always taking hundreds of notes and writing things down, and like sometimes when people would preach something, then he would write that down so he could research it and expound on it. And those are the kind of conversations that he found stimulating, which
Right.
again talks about our friend Minda Copeland made the joke, like the Greene sisters, if they're writing, because the thing is, it has to be something that stimulates, and we got that honestly from
Yeah,
our father.
that is
I
so
don't know
true.
that I will ever be, and I'm almost 60, so I'm gonna say I'm not gonna be that social butterfly that mom and Sib and my oldest son are. That's just not who I am. Like,
Right.
I find pleasure in just being in the room, like reading, studying, learning, creating. And I mean, sometimes just chilling, but
Yeah.
not as often as I should with the chilling, but I'm working on that. But I just don't need everybody else's energy.
Yeah.
um I
To
create
be
so
happy.
much, yeah, I create so much better a peace when I'm alone. And
How do you feel about the fact that Daddy kept telling us forever and a day that he was going to take us to his hometown where he was born and raised, which was St. Augustine, Florida, and we never got there. How do you feel about
I'm not real happy, because the problem is that I love my daddy, but the problem is that, and he, at the end of his life, he said that to me. He said, I sacrificed my family to do ministry because I didn't know better. And I know you remember when I had Christian, and like I was taking Christian to swimming, and I was taking him, and he would be like, she took Christian swimming. He's like, going doing that mess when I needed her here. And I was like, wait a minute, he's my son and he needed me too. I wasn't going to be that parent who, I let my boys play any sport they wanted to play. And if they didn't want to play none, that was fine. But I wanted them to have the opportunity. I moved away to give Christian the opportunity. If he doesn't take advantage of it, that's up to him. But I didn't want it that he didn't have the opportunity. So I feel like, and I don't want to make that mistake. And I still think about St. Augustine. But I was wondering if now, like, you got that ancestry thing going on, I would love to be able to go there and see if there's
That's
anybody
a
left from
great
that.
idea.
Because I honestly, it was a small family like ours. It's a small family. And like, I don't know, my dad's grandmother was an important person in his life. And I remember that because he mentioned that she raised him part of the time because Buddha worked so much. And he was like, his grandmother took him to church, and things like that. So I think knowing that part of this, at least some part of that part
That
of
would
our
be
family.
great. That would be great. And the thing is, I don't even know if I mentioned this to you or not, because I've been working on this children's book. Seems like since Jesus was a baby, but I started on it after mom and dad died. And Hassan said to me this summer, Nana, you've been writing this book since I was little. When are you going to finish this book? And I'm like, mind your business. But anyway,
That is his business.
I know, because he gave me ideas. They gave me pictures and everything for the book. But a part of that book, I don't know if I mentioned it to you, but in the last chapter of the book is basically about a grandfather spending time with his grandchildren. And because I asked the boys, if you had more time with Papa, what is some stuff you would like to have done? And that's why I came up with the idea for each chapter. And then the last chapter, he's going to take all of the boys to St. Augustine on a trip. And that came to me because we never got there, right? So I want them to have that, even if it's fictional. And sometimes you just think things don't really matter, like, oh, well, we didn't get there, and move on. You're a grown woman, get over it. But it still concerns me to this day, one, because of the sacrifice that we were sacrificed for ministry. I tell people sometimes we never had family vacations. We didn't just we never did anything just as family. If we happened to go somewhere, like I remember the time we went to Chattanooga and we went to see some sights, but we were there only in revival. So just during the daytime, we went and saw some junk, whatever we saw, but we weren't there for that. We were there because Daddy had to preach. So, I mean, we didn't do anything as a family. Nothing.
So, I'm chuckling because my husband said to me one time, we never go anywhere. And I was like, yes, we do. He goes, when you have to preach or something. But I'm talking about, I'm talking about, like, we might go stay in a hotel, but that's because I got to preach at that conference. You know what I mean? It's like, it's never like, oh, let's just go away for 2 or 3 days and chill. It's like always, oh, you want to go with me? I got to go such and such to do so-and-so. So yeah, I'm laughing. Oh man, I ain't no better than my daddy, I guess.
Well, seriously, I think that the ancestry thing would be a great idea.
Yeah, let's find our people, man. Let's find our people.
So, since we are talking about our elders and our ancestors, and I definitely wanted us to focus mainly on Daddy's side because we very seldom do that. I think we have to mention Mom's side.
I think we mentioned them a lot too.
They mentioned it. I think so too. But I think just because
I just say that my grandfather on my mother's side was just.
We hardly ever talk about him. Let's talk about him.
He was, if you ever hear the term silent, what is that term? Silent something type?
I don't know.
He was that.
I know he had silent strength because he didn't have to yell at you to get you to do stuff. He was
powerful, but he was a silent person that he didn't have a lot to say, but what he said was with great wisdom. And yeah, I really, really like that dude. Yeah.
Because I remember one time, remember the thing he says about, like, if somebody owed him something and they didn't pay him?
Right. And I still say that. And it's funny because my husband makes a joke because every time I say my granddaddy said, or he's like, they stole that. But he says they stole it from his side of the family, but that's even funnier. But well, I said, it took that for me to know you came from him, because he said, if I loan you $10 and you don't pay me back and you don't, try to let me, he goes, I'm not going to ask you. It took that for me to know you. And I remember him saying something to me one time about a good name. And he said, you want people to speak well of you. So choose a good name, meaning like have integrity and whatever. And the Bible even says it. So he was a person, like I said, he didn't say a lot, but his silent strength even within the family, like everybody knew to turn to him. Everybody knew that the final decision was going to be his. Even our grandmother, though she was really pretty, outspoken, she would always say, ask daddy. It was always, she didn't make family decisions and things like that without asking
She
him.
wouldn't even let you have something to eat unless she said, ask Dad.
Like she'd make 24 biscuits and you couldn't have one because they belonged to daddy. So we'd have to go outside and ask Papa why he was in the shed. Papa, can we get a biscuit? And he was like, it was funny because he would never call her, he called her Sister Eva. He said, Sister Eva said you couldn't have no biscuit. I said, she said we had to ask you. And it was so happy to go in there and say, Papa said we could have a biscuit.
And like he was like that Indian, he like had Indian blood or something, and he has his hair was so nice and soft, and he would lay up there on that couch with that
Wood stove.
Wood stove, and oh my God, it was hot and all that. But he let you brush his hair, and he just laying there. You could be like yanking his hair out of his head. He would just lay there. He wouldn't say anything. And I remember, I don't even know if I ever shared this with you or not, but right before I got ready to go away to college, which I've shared many times, was really just my escape, get away from home. I really didn't even want to go to school, but I got sick of going to church 24 hours a day. But anyway.
Hold on. Go ahead.
And then the very last thing that Pop-Up said to me was, like when I told him I was going away and everything, and he like, that's good or whatever. And then he said, be holy. Just, be holy and do what you know is right. And I remember those being like the last words that he said to me. And so when I got pregnant, I was the first person I thought about that I had really let down was Daddy, and then Papa. And that's another reason why, and I know I never shared this now that I'm thinking about it. That's another reason why when he died, I think I was like 7 months pregnant with Byron. And I took it really, really hard because I did love Papa a lot. But I took it harder because I felt like I let him down. Because I was up there getting high, just doing everything. Because when I told somebody, when you're raised in a strict Christian home and you can't do nothing hardly but breathe and go to church, when you get away from home for the first time, it's kind of like letting a child loose in a candy store and say, just get a Tootsie Roll. Let's just get that one thing. It's not going to happen. So pretty much everything somebody was telling me, asked me to try, I'm like, oh yeah, I'll try that. So the drugs, and then I got pregnant, and then I kept thinking, I let my Pop-Up down and he died, like never. And so I had a really bad reaction to it. I ended up in the emergency room.
I remember.
Because I kept thinking in my head, he died, like thinking I'm like a bad person, which I knowing him, he did. But at the moment, that's how I felt,
Mm-hmm.
Then I had one of my aunts who, whatever, she's gone on somewhere. She went on to tell me what a disappointment I was to the family and how, I had let everybody down and da-da-da-da-da. And then I started thinking about the fact that I think it was only like one or two of my aunts that didn't have a child before she got married. So I'm thinking, what are you talking about? Like, I'm not the first one of these bunch to have a child out of wedlock, but it just was that pressure and that expectation, from the family that made you always feel like you had to be walking on eggshells. And then finally you grow into yourself and you realize, I'm going to live my life and I'm going to be who I am. And I think that part comes from Daddy's side, because on Mom's side, there was always a pressure to follow the Bible as it was described, dress like they wanted you to dress, whatever. And because we didn't do it exactly that way, we were always had fingers pointed at us because we were wearing paints and because we were wearing jewelry and we weren't wearing makeup. And again, I think that the side of Daddy's family was like, just live your life, treat people right, and, just, you didn't have that restriction, I think, that came from mom's side.
I think more so than the religious part of her side was a people pleasing thing. It's like whether you want to do something or not, they did a lot to please family members and they weren't true to themselves. And I think that's the regard in which they weren't true to themselves, because if you want to be religious, that's what you want, then by all means. But your expectation of other people, like, you need to let other people be true to themselves, but also just allowing people to not seek. And I think there was more of the reason why people did some of the same things that other people did, but hid it for so long, was because of people pleasing. I don't want certain people to know. And I guess I just never had that at all. Not unfortunately, I will say, because there were times maybe it would have helped if I had it. But, and I think that's the part where, when I got to be of a certain age, like Dad knew that at 14, we started really bumping heads because I was his child. And I mean, you're not just going to tell me no. I want to know why no. And, I remember even at 16, I was like, I like this boy. I want him to come over. And my husband and my dad was like, no. I was like, why not? And he was like, because I said so. I said, oh, okay. And I walked on out the door and I heard Mom say, now, telling her no is not going to make her not do it. It'd be better for her to be here and we can at least monitor their interaction. But I learned later in life that I was always more his child, and I didn't really take a lot of thought to other people. But again, going back to thinking about that side of the family versus Mom's side, they were very ingrained in each other. Mom's side, where everybody was in everybody's business, and everybody, what you did, like, in the family knew it, good or bad. Over here in Daddy's side, it's like everybody lived their life, and nobody tried to tell you how to live it. And so sometimes we get caught in the middle. But like, pretty much for me, I think I lived a lot more on Daddy's side of the family's thinking, like, this is my life, I'm gonna do what I want. I don't care if you like it or don't like it. I'm not, it's not about pleasing people. So yeah, so unfortunately. But yeah, so I just feel like the positive side of Mom's family definitely was the unity, was the togetherness, was the, that part. But I also feel like it robbed people too, because people became people pleasers. Whereas with Daddy's side of the family, it was like, be your own person, do your own thing. So I think together, if they could be meshed, would make a person that's balanced enough to realize, I can't live in this world by myself. No man's an island. I have to be out here and make it happen. On the other side of that, I won't let people dictate how I make it happen, but they can be a part of my experience. So yeah. So
very good. I enjoyed this conversation. Brought back some memories, some good memories of Buddha, and I forgot all about the cat eye glasses and stuff like that.
I love them.
And this is one of the things I do want to say as we prepare to leave, of why I think it's so important for especially our young people to understand the importance of respecting our elders while we still have them, because there's a lot of things they can teach us, a lot of lessons that they can share with us, but we're so busy, and we don't have time to sit down and talk to them because we think they're crazy or they're senile or whatever. But they have a strength that was produced through troubles that a lot of us don't have today, because we seem to have backup plans, A, B, C, D. They just knew that they had to do what they had to do to survive and take care of their families, and that's what they did. And I miss that. A lot of the oral history is extremely important. So if you have an elder that's still living, you need to spend time, find somebody, sit down with them and talk to them. Also, I want us to do more to memorialize them. Like, I think a lot of times how I get sad because I don't have a lot of, I think I have 1 or 2 pictures of my parents. I don't have any pictures of my grandparents. So I just feel like I want to encourage us to, while we have our elders with us, to record things. We're always taping things and putting them on TikTok and other social media outlets. Go sit down with one of your elders and record some things so that when they're gone, you can continue to pass those things on. And again, we'd like to remind you to subscribe to our channel. We have some great conversations going on since we began in February of this year. We have been blessed to have some phenomenal guests and share some great information. And I know for a fact that you will be blessed as you subscribe to this channel. Again, I want to thank my sister, Kelly Greene Adams, for joining me today. She is definitely the memory keeper in the family. And I appreciate that. I appreciate her taking time because she's, as she says, she's always doing. But these last couple of days, she has slowed down a lot and just relaxed. And I'm glad that she took time to spend with me, because in a moment, I guess I am considered an elder. And I think about it. And one day I'll be gone and we'll have only memories. You guys will only have memories of me. So I think it's important that we document as much as possible. And again, I thank you for joining me today. And we will talk again very soon. Do you have any closing remarks?
No, ma'am. It was great. I enjoyed it.
All right. Goodbye, Buddha's baby.
See ya.
Bye-bye.